If you have problems with Zoom, don't call me.
All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order for the Downtown Design Review Board for Thursday, January 9th. I'll request staff confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes, I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice was provided.
Thank you. Moving to item 1.3, roll call.
I'll call roll now. Board Member Nelson. Board Member Freeland.
Here.
Board Member Herman.
Present.
Board Member Cates.
Here.
Chair Manley.
Present.
So we have 4 of the 5 appointed members present. That constitutes a quorum, and that will allow us to proceed with today's meeting agenda.
All right, moving to item 2.1, approval of minutes. Are there any changes, corrections to be made from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move we approve the minutes. I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Moving on to new business / old business, item 3.1.
This item is carried over from your December 12th meeting, and it was postponed to allow the business owner and the sign contractor, Gleason & Son Signs, to provide additional information to the board about the proposed wall sign and the method of installation and the backdrop of where the sign would be mounted. And so Mr. Roberts is going to give you an update of the information we received since that time.
Thank you, Dean. So in your staff report, you will find a background. We covered the background for the property at our last meeting, but you can find that still detailed in your staff report. We'll start at project proposal. So the building has a new tenant, Salina Selfie Station, and Gleason & Son Signs has applied for a sign permit to install a wall sign above the building entrance. The proposed sign would be located within and cover up a portion of the glass transom located above the building entrance. In addition to locating the sign within the transom, the building owner is proposing to paint the transom black, as you can see on the screen. The proposed sign would be 4 feet by 10.5 feet and would be internally illuminated by LED lighting with only the letters and logo being illuminated. The remainder of the cabinet would have a non-translucent white vinyl and would be opaque and would not allow light to shine through. So because this property is located within the business improvement district, review and approval of the proposed facade painting, so the painting of the transom and metal beams, as well as the wall sign, is required by the design review board before a sign permit can be issued for the sign. So we'll move on to design guidelines. We have included some additional design guidelines based on the feedback we got about the painting of the transom. So starting with signage, the design guidelines state a sign should be designed to be in balance with the overall character of the downtown area, and you should coordinate a sign within the overall facade composition. This sign is proposed to be centered on the building facade and looks to be fit within the facade composition. And if internal illumination is used, a system that backlights sign text only is preferred. I had conversations with Tiffany from Gleason & Sons, and she mentioned that the sign cabinet itself had been modified and ensured that only the letters and logo would be illuminated, so that would seem to fit within the design guidelines. The design guidelines make the following recommendations in regard to color. Paint colors on a storefront, trim, upper story openings should be related to the overall color of the building, as should such elements such as sign or awnings. Now, while the bottom portion of the building was painted black, that was done without a permit or without approval by the DRB. However, 2 storefronts south, they also have a black transom and a similar size sign located there. So it would be in line with other signs that have been approved in that regard. Next, the design guidelines talk about character-defining features and preserving those. They state, don't damage or remove character-defining features, preserve intact features with appropriate maintenance techniques. The transom would be a character-defining feature of this building frontage, and painting it would otherwise be discouraged. However, you'll find in policy F.2 of the design guidelines, it says don't cover or obscure original facade materials. However, if masonry was painted historically, then it may be appropriate to repaint. This property differs from the eccentricity building where it has the blonde brick that was otherwise unpainted. This white brick has historically been painted. So this facade has been modified before, and this would not be the first time exterior paint would be applied in this scenario. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention. So we'll move on to staff analysis. The applicant in this case is proposing to install a new sign to reflect a change in occupancy. Again, the sign will be white vinyl with black lettering and the Selfie Station logo, and it is proposed to be located within the glass transom on the front facade of the building. The sign cabinet for the proposed sign is 4 feet by 10 feet, which staff believes is proportionate to the scale of the 25-foot building facade. The sign as proposed would conform with the standards and limitations in the C4 sign regulations. Staff did have discussions with the sign contractor about the illumination method. These conversations included changing of the white background to a different color. And the sign contractor indicated that they were ensuring that the white would be opaque, and that they were aware that that was something that was listed in the design guidelines. The glass transom and lintel where the proposed sign is to be located is currently behind the existing awning. The business owner, Mr. Tellison, has provided photos of the current condition of the transom. You can see those on the screen. So aside from the appearance of rust located on the metal beams, which you can see, the transom appears to be in relatively fair condition, with cleaning and some minor maintenance. And within the transom is currently in an unpainted state. So in addition to the approval of the proposed sign, approval of a certificate of compatibility to paint the transom black would otherwise cover the metal and glass that you see on the screen. The painting would be similar to the transom located at Salina Chiropractic, addressed 115 South Santa Fe. And the sign contractor is proposing to bolt an angle iron to the existing metal beam, and then the sign will be attached to an iron and hang down and be centered within the transom. So I think Board Member Herman, you mentioned how it would be attached, and I think you asked about a similar method. So yes, it would be attached to the metal beam, and then so it would not actually be installed into the glass itself. So there are 2 action items for you today. 1 would be the exterior painting. 2 would be the sign itself. We'll go ahead and go through both, and then you guys can take both items individually. So we'll start with exterior painting. In review of the project for compliance with the design guidelines, it appears to staff the following findings can be made to support approval of the exterior painting of the transom. So the exterior masonry on this building was painted historically, and this is a proposal to repaint a portion of a painted surface. The proposed black color scheme is compatible with the building 2 storefronts to the south on the east side of Santa Fe. The original prism glass block transom is a character-defining feature of the front building facade, but is not in good condition. So painting would cover that, and the proposed painting of the transom will help improve the overall visual aesthetic of the facade. It does appear to staff that the following findings could be made to support denial of painting of the transom. The design guidelines discourage modifying or damaging a character-defining feature, and the painting of the transom could begin a cycle of repainting and maintenance over time that may be more expensive than cleaning and repair of the original glass transom. So alternatives for that action item would be to approve the facade renovation project or the painting of the transom as proposed by the applicant based upon finding that cleaning and preservation of the existing transom is not feasible or desirable, and that an exception to the design guidelines is justified in this case with or without conditions. 2, you could postpone consideration of the application to a further meeting date in order to acquire additional information. 3, you could deny the proposed facade renovation or painting project based upon suggested findings that the painting of character-defining features is discouraged by the design guidelines. Following review, staff would recommend option 2 with the following, staff would recommend option 1, approval with the following condition. The exterior painting shall be limited to the transom and metal beams only. No other part of the exterior facade shall be painted or modified without review and approval by this board. And so then we'll move on to possible findings for the sign itself. So findings in support of the sign. The proposed sign was coordinated with the overall facade. The internally illuminated cabinet sign will be subordinate to the overall building facade if modified to be backlit as proposed. The proposed sign will utilize a white sign face and black lettering that would complement the building materials and front facade. The proposed sign will make the building more recognizable for motorists, and the proposed sign conforms with the sign size limitations in the C4 zoning district. So you would have the following alternatives for the sign. You could approve the sign as proposed. You could approve the sign subject to any conditions approved by the majority of the design review board members. You could postpone consideration of the application if you wanted more details. You could postpone consideration of the application to allow the applicant to submit an alternative sign design that more closely conforms with the design, color, and appearance of the Salina Chiropractic sign. That would be to your discretion. Or you could deny the application as presented upon making findings of fact for the reasons of denial. And staff would recommend option number 2, approval subject to conditions. Condition 1 would be that the sign cabinet is indeed modified so that only the letters and logo are internally illuminated, and that if there are any significant changes to the sign or sign design, those will be reviewed by staff and brought back to the board if additional review is required. And with that, staff's available for any questions, and the business owner is here as well.
Just wanted to add one thing that we noted in our report, and you can't see because it's kind of clipped in this picture, but when this was the 111 Ultra Lounge and they had a sign on their awning, they installed 4 gooseneck lamps, and those gooseneck lamps illuminated the sign that was on the awning. And it's not clear to us in this application what the status of those gooseneck lamps are and whether they're still in use or what function they may serve or how they're related to this work. So we would like that applicant to address the current status and projected use of the gooseneck lamps.
All right, thank you for the report. Are there any questions of staff from the board? All right, I'll invite the applicant up to answer the question at hand regarding the lamps and maybe comment on anything else that you may have heard.
I believe all the lamps are functioning, and we would leave them in place.
Okay.
But if the sign is internally, what function would they just light the facade, or what function do they serve?
Facade and the sidewalk, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
I guess for the record, I need to step out of this conversation and recuse myself from voting because the applicant and I have worked directly together. I was a designer of the logo, so I will recuse myself from the official vote.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to note, just for the benefit of the board, the painting of the transom at 115, where Salina Chiropractic is located, was reviewed and approved by the board in 2020. And that was before Salina Chiropractic became a tenant. It was done by the building owner, and then the sign for Salina Chiropractic was reviewed and approved by the board in 2021. So the action that was taken at 115 South Santa Fe as far as the transom and trim, that work was reviewed and approved by the board. So.
Okay. Any other comments or, okay.
Nope.
Thank you. All right, I will open it up to, do we have anybody online from the public that would like to comment?
We do have Miss Bishop from SDI, and that would be the only person online that we have.
Okay,
Hello, I don't have any questions or concerns. Thank you.
thank you, Leslie. All right, bringing it back to the board for potential motion.
I would move that we take this staff recommendation for the exterior painting, limited to the transom and the metal beams only. I'll
Yes,
second.
Okay, moved and seconded. So we're taking these individually. So this is just in regards to the first step of this two-step process. So it has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I will add a little bit to this in comments of my inevitable support of it. I read in here in the guidelines, interrupts the visual continuity along the street. I think that not painting it, and granted 90% of the building is already painted, that specific piece of it would interrupt the continuity of that individual building, but also with Salina Chiropractic having this one be different than Salina Chiropractic interrupts the visual continuity, and also the painting of the glass could be reversed in the future. We have covered up character-defining features in the past as long as it was reversible, and I think this one would be reversible. It's my opinion. So that's my additional comments. Not too sure if that was the right way to say it, but moved and seconded. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. So motion passes 3-0 with Mr. Freeland recusing himself. All right, the second item of the regards to the sign, is there a motion there?
I move to approve the option number 2 as staff recommended with the conditions of approval.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Again, motion passes again 3-0. Mr. Freeland recusing himself. Thank you for bearing with us throughout this process and returning. This has been a 2-year process for you. So, thank you.
So there is a 14-day protest period, and then you'll get a letter, and then this will allow us to approve a sign permit.
We already have the sign permit in, so we can just release the permit at that time.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item 3.2, administrative items. And
We have
before you
for
begin,
your
Dean.
consideration an annual report of your 2024 attendance and activities. And so the city commission obviously the city has a number of advisory boards, and the members are appointed by the city commission, and their main concern is that the people that they appoint participate and attend. Those meetings and are active members. So what we've broken this report down into is accomplishments and activities, and then we have provided our records of meeting attendance and also just a reminder of who's on, where their terms currently sit, and then our final exhibit just gives you a rundown of, for your benefit, of how the cases broke down in 2024, and you can see that of the cases, 14 of them were for signs, and so it was a pretty good variety. You did not break a record. The record is 28 design review cases, and you only had 26. So it may have seemed like it was busy, and you did have 13 meetings, and that's one more than you had in 2023. One thing that's slowed down a little bit in 2018 and 19 is when we had our initial run of establishments trying to establish sidewalk dining or patios, and in this past year the only one that was presented was a modification for how Prickly Pear used Campbell Plaza and Jose Peppers constructing an enclosed patio, which is part of the construction you see going on now. And so we take the work that you do, and that those ultimately result in building permits and sign permits being issued and inspected. And so when you approve plans for a Jose Peppers patio or a Yaya's patio or signage for Prairie Land Market, part of our job is, when the project's done, to go out and inspect to make sure that the plans that were submitted to this board is what got done in the real world. And so that is, we're involved in the front end, and then we're involved in the back end. There was a couple things that I wanted to mention, one of which happened quickly before year end, but we had initially set up our sidewalk dining ordinance, and it made the annual review and the renewal of those, they have to be renewed annually and reviewed each year. And so initially the ordinance was set up where those had to come before this board, and I think we had one meeting where we had seven sidewalk dining renewals. So we're preparing staff reports, we're reviewing things, the applicants have to come to a meeting, all those things. And it was suggested to us by the design review board that maybe that should be just an administrative function, that if everything's going well, that staff should just be able to renew those and not involve the board unless there were issues or problems. And so that change was approved by the city commission, and so now annual reviews for sidewalk cafes are done by staff, and the only ones that we'd bring to you is if somebody was bringing a new one or if they were making a substantial modification to one. The other thing, and we just had to check it twice to make sure that it really happened, but in 2016 we took a pretty comprehensive look at the design review ordinance, and there were quite a number of amendments and some streamlining and some terminology changes and things that were adopted by the city commission in 2016, and we had met multiple times with the design review board and with the downtown board of advisors and put together a package of amendments in 2016. And then some of you may recall in 2017, the Lee District term stopped being used, and we went back to being Salina Business Improvement District number 1. And so there was an ordinance that was done that was changed the name of the review board to Downtown Salina Business Improvement District. Well, the base ordinance that was used to make that change was the earlier 2008 ordinance, and all the 2016 changes were inadvertently repealed. And so we only discovered that in December, and essentially the City Commission reinstated all the 2016 code language in that update and streamlined a couple other things. I think the main thing for you and what we attached is what we call the design review matrix, and what that means is that if you're a downtown business or building owner and you've got a project that might involve a certificate of compatibility, if it falls within the category of minor work on that matrix, then it's not going to come to this board, and we're just going to review it as a staff. And if there's an X in the column that says major work DRB review, then those are the kind of things that we're going to bring to the board. And so the other thing we've attached is just the glossary of terms that are attached to our design guidelines. And so we provided that because sometimes in our staff report we'll use terms that you might not know what we're referring to, and so the glossaries just kind of help you. I worked here for 20 years before I knew what a bulkhead was, and so I kept seeing these reports from John Berger talking about the bulkhead of a building, and I didn't know what he was talking about. So having that in the glossary that helps with understanding some of the terms that might describe features on a building or that you might see in a staff report. So that's just there for your benefit so that you can see the matrix, and so you can and see the ordinance associated with sidewalk dining. So if you want to protest any of your absences on the attendance, you can take that up with Daisy. Otherwise, the appropriate thing would be to review it, and if you're comfortable with that, just have a motion that we pass this along to the City Commission as your report for 2024 activities.
We'll make one request on the attendance report. The last line, it says 10 regular meetings were canceled due to lack of quorum versus lack of agenda items. I consider these fairly different topics. And I don't want to read that 10 times we weren't able to meet because we didn't get together or we couldn't find quorum, which is misleading, I guess. So I would request those get split apart. But the rest of it looks good from my opinion.
Yeah, I think we can work with Daisy to split those out. We have the word "or" in there, but I could see how if you don't see the word "or" right away, then that's potentially misleading. And so I think the number of meetings canceled due to lack of agenda items is much higher than the number of meetings for lack of a quorum, but I think that's a good thing for us to know and to track. So,
thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding this item from the board? All right, I will entertain a motion to accept.
I move to accept.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
so we'll send this along to the City Commission, and they'll see that this board is quite active and that everyone who's on the board is engaged. So.
All right. Moving on to preliminary discussion items. Lost my other page here.
We don't have any preliminary discussion items to bring forward unless you have any questions about any. It's kind of hard to see any projects going on right now, but if you had a question about the status of one, we do have, we've taken care of our administrative item, and we have no discussion items. The only thing we have for other business is that there would be a meeting held 2 weeks from today for a project associated with Salina Regional Health Center. They have a little courtyard that's along Santa Fe, and they're proposing to fill that courtyard in with a MRI imaging addition that they would construct there. And so the hospital is within the business improvement district, and so their projects come before the board, and that project would be presented at your meeting on the 23rd.
All right. Public forum. Leslie, anything for today?
She's already signed off, so
Okay.
we don't have anyone from the public online or in the room.
I'll take that as a no. All right. I will motion for adjournment.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you very much.